we'll start with a section in the Talmud. So, okay. So it says in the Talmud that Rabbi Yeshua ben Lakish said that every word that Hashem said, the Jewish people ended up dying. So when Hashem said the first of the 10 commandments, they died. Then they said the second of the 10 commandments and they died. The Talmud asks the question, then how did they survive? How did they hear the second of the 10 commandments if they died after the first one? So the Talmud says that the same dew that Hashem is going to use to cause the Jewish people to become back alive when the Mashiach comes, he used that same mechanism to cause them to come back alive, and then they were able to hear the second of the 10 commandments. Now, Rabbi Shmuel ben Levi says that every time they heard the words from Hashem, they moved backwards 12 miles because they were so scared of the powerful voice of Hashem. And the angels would have to push them back to go closer to the mountain. As it says in the Tehillim, Malchei Tzivaot Yedodin Yedodin, which means the angels help us get closer and closer. Then the Talmud continues that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, when Moses came up to the mountain, we discussed this section many times, but when Moses came up to the mountain to receive the Torah, the angel said, why is there a human here? What's a human being doing up here in heaven? So Hashem said he came to receive the Torah. So the angels told God, the Torah that's been 974 generations before the world was created, the Torah has already been up here. You want to give it to a human? It says that 2,000 years before Hashem created the world, he already thought of writing the Torah. So Hashem told Moses, give them an answer. So he answered them like this. So Moses said to Hashem, I'm scared that their breath is going to burn me to death. So Hashem said, hold on to my chair. And Moses answered them and he said, what's in the Torah? He asked Hashem. Hashem said, it says, I am your God that took you out of Egypt. So he asked the angels, have you been in Egypt? Have you? You don't need a Torah. You have not been in Egypt. Then he asked, what else does it say? It says, don't bow to idols. So Moses asked the angels, do you guys have idols? Do you live amongst the nations that have idols? You're up in heaven. Then he asked them, what else does it say in the Torah? So God said, it says, you should honor the Shabbos. He said, do you guys work? You don't work 6 days. You don't need to have the Torah because you don't need Shabbos. Shabbos is if you worked hard for 6 days. And then Moses went on and on. He asked Hashem, what does it say in the Torah? He said, it says you should honor a mother and father. You guys don't have a mother and father, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to discuss a little more details to explain exactly what this means. So I wanted to discuss one more piece of the Talmud, and then I want to explain a talk from the Lubavitcher Rebbe from 1973, a mimer that the Rebbe said actually the night before Shavuot. So equivalent to this year, it would be Sunday night. The Rebbe said a mimer Hasidic discourse that I wanted to discuss here. But basically, right before the Jewish people were about to receive the Torah, they told Hashem, Naseh v'nishma. Hashem said, are you ready to receive it? First, he asked the other nations. So the other nations said, what does it say in the Torah? So they said, God said, it says you shouldn't kill. They said, it's not for us. Then the next nation asked, what does it say? It says you shouldn't steal. So they said, it's not for us. They came to the Jews. The Jewish people said, Naseh, we will do it, and then we will hear. So we'll first do what it says, and then we will listen to hear what you have to say. And the other nations laughed at us. They said, why don't you first want to hear what it says? You can't take upon yourself. Actually, it says in the Talmud that one of the great sages was sitting and he was studying Torah, and his hands were underneath his feet because he was pressuring himself to try to understand what the Torah was saying. It was so hard. So his friend, which wasn't Jewish, came over to him and said, this is what happens when you guys accept something before you find out what it says in it. So the Tana, the rabbi, explained to him, he says, we're not like you guys. By you first want to hear. We first say we're going to do it. And then once we accepted it, Hashem helps us. You know, it says, if you try to do something, you're having a hard time. If you put in the effort, Hashem will help you. And this is what he told him. We try, we put in the effort, and Hashem helps us. And then it says that when the Jews said, we're going to do, and then we're going to hear, there were 60,000 angels came to each Jew and gave each Jew 2 crowns, one for Naseh and one for Nishma. The minute we sinned, we lost 120,000 angels came down, which is double the 600,000, and removed, I'm sorry, not double the 600,000, but 120,000 angels came down and removed their crowns from their head. And then it says when the Mashiach comes, we'll get these crowns back again. Anyways, so there's several questions we could ask on this whole episode of the receiving of the Torah. So let's discuss a little this concept of the receiving of the Torah. You know, when you say I will do and then I will hear, you're basically completely devoted not to what the person is telling you, but to the person himself. So we're so connected with Hashem, we're more connected to him than to what he has to say. And that's why we right away said, yeah. Like if your mom asks you, could you do me a favor? Or someone that you love asks if you could do them a favor, you right away say, yeah. Because you love them, not because you don't care what they're going to tell you. It makes no difference. So when we said, Naseh, we're going to do, and then we're going to hear, we have a complete devotion to the one that's going to talk to us, which is Hashem himself. Now, there's several questions here. First of all, in the Hebrew alphabet, in the Hebrew language, when you say the word na'aseh, it means you're going to do. Doing, the word na'aseh is the lowest form of action. There could be kiyum, like we learned last week. There's laws that don't have an understanding. There's many different ways of learning the laws, of saying doing. Why would we use na'aseh? You're talking about such a holy thing like Torah, and you're saying the lowest possible form of action, which is na'aseh? Question number 2. What's the first thing Hashem said? Vayedaber Elokim. Hashem spoke, and he gave the 10 commandments. Elokim, for those of you that have studied, Elokim is the lowest form of Hashem's name. You have Elokim, you have Adna, you have Avaya, you have other Shakai. Elokim happens to be the lowest of Hashem's name. Why would Hashem start with the lowest of his name? He should start with Havaya, with something higher. Number 3, there were thundering and lightning, loud sounds. Wait a minute. We know there were miracles. You heard the lightning and you saw the thunder. But why would Hashem do such simple acts, so to speak? Okay, so thunder and lightning. There's thundering and lightning all the time. It's nothing new. What's the big deal that he made it thunder and lightning during the giving of the Torah? That's one. That's a third question. Number 4, you know what Hashem tells us? Okay, guys, we're receiving the Torah. Come to Mount Sinai. Get ready for 3 days, maybe 6 days. And what does Hashem tell us? Don't kill. This is what I came here for. You know, a guy calls you into a meeting and he says, I want to give you 5 rules. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't be jealous. I mean, this is not what we came here for. At least, you know, give us some strong, powerful laws that don't even make sense. Like, you know, the law of shatnez, let's say. Wow, that's pretty amazing because we don't have any understanding. That's a pretty powerful law. Because if you don't understand it, then it has a higher meaning to it. You just don't understand. So why would Hashem give us these simple laws? And by the way, a lot of them were already given, the 7 Noah laws that were already given way before us. So what would be the reason Hashem would give us this whole revelation of the Torah? And here he's just telling us simple laws. So, you know, our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, have already kept the entire Torah. We learned this many times. They kept the Torah, they studied Torah, they kept the Torah, and so on and so forth. So think about it. If Abraham already had tefillin, and he already put on tefillin, if Abraham already kept Shabbos, and Abraham already kept Pesach, what changed when we received the Torah? What's new? We already got it. What's the big deal? So there's something much different about us receiving the Torah. First of all, we spent 210 years in Egypt. That's first of all. We spent many years in Egypt. We suffered in Egypt. And then we went and received the Torah. This was a very big change that happened to us that did not happen to the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So the idea basically is as follows. When Abraham put on tefillin, he didn't have straps the way we have it. He took his sticks, and through his sticks, he was able to bring down some holy revelation that was accomplished through the sticks. That's what he was able to do. There's a big difference between us and prior to receiving of the Torah. We have the ability to take something physical and make it holy. We could take a tefillin, you take your parchment, you take tzitzis, you take matzah, you make it, it's a transition from physical to spiritual. You could change it. It used to be a parchment of an animal, and now I made it into a tefillin. Now it becomes holy. Look at the entire concept, what happened. We left Egypt, we physically left Egypt, but we also had a spiritual leaving of Egypt. Hashem uplifted us to a higher spiritual level. We got the 10 Commandments. Hashem did use a very high word, Anochi, I am your God. But at the same time, he spoke about the most physical things. He gave us the Torah, which is extremely high. And he gave it even to simple people. Hashem gave us the Torah through his revelation, through sort of imposing it on us from above. And at the same time, we had to prepare for 3 days and get ready for it. So again, you have the extreme high to the extreme low, to the extreme physical. we were completely nullified to Hashem, which is giving us the rules. And then it came down into the lowest, down here into the world. We find by the receiving of the Torah, we find these two opposites in everything you look at. Hashem came down from above, came down to us. Hashem was giving a high revelation, and then he brought it down into the most simple things. Hashem told us to get ready. We had to do something on our own. We had to count the 49 days from the day we left Egypt till the day we received the Torah. We were sort of purifying ourselves on a daily basis, going higher and higher to the receiving of the Torah. This is the major transition that took place at the receiving of the Torah. And that's why it came to the most simple people, circumstances, and into the most simple situations. Because the purpose of the receiving of the Torah is to make that transition. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob could not take anything physical and make it spiritual. It wouldn't work. Physical was physical and spiritual was spiritual. It's two different worlds. This is the fascinating thing that took place at the receiving of the Torah. And this is what we take from this fascinating moment of the receiving of the Torah. Being a good Jew and being a holy Jew is not only in shul. It's not only in the synagogue when you're davening or when you're learning or when you're involved in a holy program in the shul. Being a holy Jew could also be in your house and in your business. And it's even more in your home and your business because you're making a transition from something physical and making it spiritual. You're taking something that's a physical, your home, your business, you're putting up a mezuzah, you're bringing tefillin, you're talking to someone, whether they're Jewish or not, and you're speaking to them about something holy, about being a better person. You're speaking to them about holy acts. You're speaking to them to believe in one God. You're speaking to them about being a better person and improving themselves. You're educating them. That's the most important part of the holiness. Bringing holiness into your mundane, constant, daily routine. And this is why we see that when Hashem made all the noise, he brought it down into the most physical. He didn't tell us the laws of shatnez then. He didn't tell us lofty laws. He gave us laws that were the most practical because he wanted to connect the spiritual into the most possible physical down here in this world. The only issue was that we as humans were not ready for this revelation. We just left Egypt. We were so close to being, from the time we were slaves. And unfortunately, 40 days later, we bowed to idols. Even though we were told 40 days prior, don't bow to idols. Because we didn't have a full transition. We didn't completely change. And that's why now when we count the Omer, started from Passover, and we have another couple days till Saturday night is the last day we count, we are cleansing ourselves. We clean ourselves from our inappropriate behaviors. You know, there's 7 different emotions. There's kindness, there's severity, there's beauty, there's being victorious. There's many different emotions that humans have. So you might have a tendency to get angry. You might be jealous. You might be too kind sometimes when you know you shouldn't be. You might be too strict when you know you should not be. So all of these laws, all of these midot and these emotions, you have the ability to work on yourself. And each day of the Sfirat HaOmer, we take one of these midot and we improve in it. Whether we need to be more kind, maybe sometimes we need to be more severe, maybe on ourselves. We have to be more disciplined. Maybe sometimes we treat others inappropriately, and maybe we have to improve our behavior. So this is what the counting of the Omer is, to cleanse in ourselves and make ourselves more pure and better for the receiving of the Torah. So now, even though then they weren't necessarily fully prepared, but we are getting ourselves ready to be ready for this very holy moment of the receiving of the Torah. And I think the takeaway is to take our spiritual, our physical life, and try to bring as much holiness into your mundane life. Even if you're having a conference call or a meeting with somebody, and even if they're not Jewish, always try to speak to them about something holy, whether it's one God, whether it's being a better person, and little by little we'll be able to impact the entire world. There's a couple laws that we do on Shavuot. It's not really like any other holiday because there is actually no mitzvah of the day. Every holiday, like Rosh Hashanah, you have to blow the shofar. On Sukkot, you have to shake the lulav. And even Chanukah, which is a mitzvah from the rabbi, you have to light the menorah. On Purim, you have to hear the Megillah. On Pesach, you have to eat matzah. You know, but there's no law of Shavuot. We're just celebrating the receiving of the Torah. That's it. But there's nothing you really have to do. You have to go to the shul and hear the reading of the Ten Commandments. That's a very important thing to be done. On Monday morning, you have to hear the reading of the Ten Commandments. Then there's a custom. Again, it's not a mitzvah. It's a custom to eat dairy products on Shavuot. So there's many reasons given, but I'm going to discuss here 5 reasons why we eat dairy, chalav, on Shavuot. So first of all,
we didn't know how to shech the creatures to make them kosher.
Okay. What did you say, Reuven?
So we didn't know how to shecht, where it is to kill the creature in order to make it kosher. We didn't know the law yet.
Okay. Close. You're close, Reuven. But I'll discuss exactly the details of that one. Yes. Okay. So the day Moses was taken out of the water was on the 6th of Sivan, which is the day of the receiving of the Torah. And Moses refused to nurse from a non-Jewish woman. He only was willing to nurse from a Jewish woman. And to remember this incident, that Moses was just a little baby and he refused to nurse from the Egyptian woman. And they had to go get a Jewish woman, which lo and behold was his own mother. So to commemorate that, we eat dairy, chalav, on Shavuot. Another reason is, similar to what Reuven just mentioned, that till we received the Torah, you were allowed to just kill an animal or choke it and eat it. Now, when we received the Torah, we were given the laws of Shechita. So we actually did know how to shech because we were given the laws of how to shech. And all the vessels we had that we cooked with were not kosher. That was the problem, because all our vessels were not kosher, and you couldn't make it kosher because the day of the receiving of the Torah was Shabbos. And everybody agrees that the Torah was given on Shabbat. So the only way to do this was to eat dairy products that do not need to be cooked. So that's a second reason why we eat dairy on Shavuot. A third reason, chalav, if you take the word chalav, chet, which is 8, and lamed, which is 30, and vet, which is 2, so 8 plus 30 plus 2 equals 40, corresponding to the 40 days that Moses was on the mountain. Reason number 3, it says in the Medrash that there's 8 names for Mount Sinai. One of the names of Mount Sinai is called Gavnunim. You say it in the Tehillim, actually. Har Gavnunim, which is white, which is white like cheese, and therefore you eat gavina. If you know in the Hebrew, you say gavina. So corresponding to the mountain, which was called Gavnunim, so therefore you eat gavina, which means cheese. So the mountain meant cheese. So if you're lactose intolerant, you have to, maybe if you eat soy cheese, I don't know if you get the mitzvah with that. If you eat, the fake cheese, probably doesn't count. So it's not necessarily a mitzvah, meaning it's just a custom. So if you have an issue with eating dairy products, it's not an emergency. Now, reason number 5, another reason is because the Torah only loves humble people. The way to learn Torah is through being humble. Years ago, they would actually sit on the floor while they studied Torah, showing the idea of being humble. And dairy products is meichel shel katnos. It's not like a piece of meat or a piece of chicken. It's more of a humble food. We would say in Yiddish, it's not so grub. Grub means it's a very, much more physical. You're eating an animal. Cheese, of course, it comes from an animal, but you're not actually eating the animal. So it's a refined type of food. And Torah rests better on people that are more refined and more humble. So that's there's another reason that's given. It says, Dvash v'cholav tachas l'sheinecha. You should have honey and milk under your tongue. And Torah is compared to honey and milk because they both show on the power of the Torah. Whoever studies Torah, he becomes pure. So this brings out the concept of honey and milk. Anyways, that's probably the only thing that's obviously on Shavuot. You should have a nice meal because that's the way we celebrate holidays by the Jewish people. You have another meal and then you drink wine and so on and so forth. But only Yarden wine. Make sure you don't get any Barkan.
No Barkan. Bark off.
I have a couple bottles of Barkan, Jeffrey. What should I do with them? I'll donate it.
Okay.
All right. Any questions? So
thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, Sei gesund, everybody. And Mirz Hashem, Sunday night is Shavuot. So Monday and Tuesday is like Shabbos. So you have to, if you're able, better to be off. Probably should be off work on those 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. So if you're looking to take off, the good 2 days to take off work.
What about going to the doctor?
Unless it's an emergency.
Right. It's an emergency, yeah.